everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the discussions here on Purple Chorus. And today I'm delighted to have not just one guest, but two guests. And they both are absolutely amazing people from entirely different angles. My first guest, who I will allow to introduce herself, is classical musician with epilepsy, Martha Curtis. And the second guest is clinical scientist, Professor Emeritus of Wisconsin University and music therapist, Dr. Dale Taylor. So first of all, I will pass the ball to Martha Curtis.
Hello. I'm so glad to actually meet you. I'm a violinist. I was always a violinist and grew up with epilepsy, intractable epilepsy. So I swallowed a lot of medications and walked out on stage, um, seized from time to time, but picked my violin back up and finished the piece. I had for 45 years, I performed professionally. And partway through, the seizures got really nuts and generalized to grand mal seizures. And so I would end up on the floor. And I realized nobody was going to pay me a salary was going to pay me to do that. That was one step too far. So that's when I had a series of brain surgeries. Cleveland Clinic was doing their first professional musician, and it scared them to death. And I'm probably supposed to say that in some more delicate way, but it scared him to death. And so we did tests uh, on my brain. The beauty of the whole thing is it took 3 surgeries, but I won.
Mhm.
And I can not only still play, but I can memorize things I couldn't memorize before. And it's really cool to have my whole right temporal lobe gone as a musician, um, and be better at what I do because the seizures.
Okay. And Dr. Taylor.
Yes, thank you for having me. It's a joy to be here to speak to you and to Martha. I've met Martha before at a music therapy conference where she was a keynote speaker. And I was quite fascinated with her presentation because, as she may remember, I practically knocked her down trying to get to her in my joy, because in all my years of being a music therapist and going to conferences, I had never seen anyone put a picture of the brain showing the amygdala on the screen to my fellow music therapy colleagues. And so I'd been writing about that. But to give you some idea of how I got here, um, I grew up in Topeka, Kansas, and I enjoyed singing. My dad was a singer, not professionally, but I think I got my love of singing from him because he used to sing every morning as he got ready to go to work. And when I went to college, I went to college to major in music therapy. During that time, I was required to take one neurology course. And in the advanced music therapy classes, I expected that information to show up, but it did not. And I was always curious why. But then I had an interesting occurrence when I was in graduate school. Uh, a person whom I had never met, but he lived only a block and a half from me. He went to sleep when he was driving toward Topeka, and I was driving away from Topeka to go back to the University of Kansas. And he hit me head on. As a result of that, I was in a coma for 2 or 3 days, and I had a brain concussion and a fractured skull. And I did not, it did not result in epilepsy or any disorders of any kind. But my recovery from that was very interesting, and it was different from what I thought it would be based on what I had learned in my neurology class.
Mm.
So I became very interested in that and began to ask myself, why is music therapeutic? And I began to ask the rest of the field and experts in our field, why is music therapeutic? None of them could really answer that question. Even when I got all the way through my PhD, I still didn't have an answer. So after that, I began to look at other fields. And when I was looking at the field of people with speech disorders, and I came across aphasia and learned that aphasia is problems with language symbols due to brain damage. Um, I realized that there may be some parallels here because they also said that people who are involved in music recover better and faster from from injuries that cause disorder than people who are not involved in music. So I followed that pathway, and the answer to my question came uh, as I taught myself the whole field of neurology and got more and more into neuroscience. So after that, I wrote a book to introduce my music therapy colleagues to the fact that neuroscience really answers a lot of those unanswered questions for us as to why music is therapeutic. Um, and that's when I found out about the amygdala and its role and the effect of music on uh, the amygdala and how it does its role, which is why I've always been, since meeting and hearing Martha speak and meeting her, I've been quite fascinated with her story.
Mm.
So,
I mean, that's a brilliant. That's certainly more explicit an introduction than I could possibly have hoped to have given. Really interesting that you mentioned aphasia, um, because as far as I'm aware, problems with the ability to either speak and or understand what's being said to you are quite common in epilepsy patients as well, when they're recovering from a seizure. I know that from personal experience, there would be times when I would come out of a seizure and somebody would ask me a question and I would hear the words, but I didn't actually know what those words were supposed to prompt.
right.
And it's really interesting to hear that from your context as well.
Well, as I began to understand neuroscience and understand how the brain functions, uh, it it's very different from what I had surmised because the brain has different parts of itself that are assigned different jobs. Every part of the brain has some sort of job to do. In many parts, it's the same job all the time, and other parts of it are equipped to handle whatever comes along. Um, so, in a situation where a person is having a seizure, there is a dysrhythmia of the normal brain rhythms of nerve impulses that are always going on all the time. We call them alpha rhythms and beta rhythms, and there's names for all these different rhythms, and we measure them uh, in in sleeping and in waking and in different ages and different people and different genders and there's all kind of data out there as to what these rhythms normally are supposed to be like or what the normal ranges are. But during a seizure, those rhythms become very arrhythmic. They become inharmonic. So as a person is coming out of a seizure and the various rhythms are reharmonizing themselves, there is a period in which they're not fully there yet. They're not fully in sync with each other. So, depending on what part of the brain there is dysfunction where the dysrhythmia starts, there may be a part of the brain that is slower to recover its normal rhythmic patterns than the other parts. And if that is in one of the speech centers, especially there are various speech centers. I'm trying to avoid getting too technical here because I'm going to assume that most of our audience or most listeners will not be neuroscientists. But there are various speech centers, and they do different things with regard to speech. Because when you think about speech, there's muscle, there's hearing, there's breathing. There's so much that has to be coordinated in order for an animal like a human to actually talk. So when you think of it biologically, it is really quite a remarkable thing. So there are various parts of the brain that may recover from a seizure at different rates, and that may account for what you were perceiving. As I had brain damage from my accident, I did not have aphasia, but I had to learn to walk again. And there are other skills that I had to learn to do again. And so I was doing things to reconnect those synapses in my own brain that were damaged by the blow to my head that put me in the coma. So there are some parallels, but it's not the same.
But I do appreciate that there are parallels. Martha, just as just throwing a sideball kind of thing, you mentioned that some of the seizures that you had were during performance.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Well, a lot of, actually, a lot of them nobody had to know because it was the quote unquote aura, the simple partial, the focal aware seizure where, and, but, and I could have one of those in the middle of Brahms symphony and just keep going. I would spend some time if I was resting well in, what color, I tried to keep my brain in the room, as I would say. Um, the oboe has a solo, the violists are playing 16th notes, the color, the trim of the hall is burgundy. I mean, anything to just like cram my brain with not, with having to work.
yeah.
And some of those I remember really well, like because I was in orchestra hall in Chicago, and my last concert, Interlochen Arts Academy, and that plaintive solo from this, I think I don't remember, maybe the 12th variation of the Elgar and Nicola variations, was a cellist I was never going to see again, and he started that, and I started in that, Laura started, and but nobody knew. My only real way of knowing if it went further is if somebody else knew. And lots of times nobody had any idea. I just kept playing. And it was when the eeriness of the aura, when eeriness spiked to terror that I was going to be killed.
Yes.
It's because of seizure spread. And it was at that point that I always thought I finished fine. I didn't know why anybody was so upset. But it's because I wasn't playing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was playing garbage. So I got my stand partners to get my violin and my bow. I would just tell them I never said seizure. I never said epilepsy. I
Right.
said if my eyes get funny and I start playing garbage, I might be talking about dying, just get my violin and my bow out of my hands, put them on the floor in front of me, and I'll be there. Because I wasn't
So,
having normal seizures. I would stay seated and have whatever it was I was doing. Um, and then I came out of next to Malcolm Frager, a great pianist in the 80s, one of the great pianists in the middle of a performance of the Beethoven Emperor Concerto. And you really do just phase back in. But I remember, one of the things as I could hear again, it's as could see that everyone was in black, which meant this was no rehearsal. This was a performance. And my violin and bow were in front of me on the floor, and I picked them up. And I couldn't tell quite what was happening. My stand partner pointed to the page, and it was a transition. It was this transition that's played just before the third movement starts. And so it was, we weren't in a melody, we weren't in but I got my violin and thank goodness the piano starts. He does it by himself. There's no orchestra. So I had a little moment there to be able to figure out what was happening and put up my violin when the orchestra came in and had to play that same rhythm. I played the whole last movement. And I I go with the word proprioception.
right.
Your muscles,
Yeah.
that concept that your body knows your body and your muscles and tendons and bones and everything. Having practiced for so many years and played the violin, for having played the piano since I was 5 and the violin from like 9 to at that point I was in my 30s,
Right.
maybe. Yeah, the late 20s. So my body knew what to do, and it just
Yeah.
did it. Boy, was I
So,
glad.
so
But
because a lot of your seizures happened during performance or during rehearsal, was there ever any question that what you were experiencing were musicogenic seizures?
well, no, because most of them didn't happen while performing. But I was like, a lot of them happened in audiences
Okay.
because that's way too, I was going to say overwhelming to a system that once you turn out the lights and I get a little dozy, that's where it seized. So just as many of them happened riding as a passenger of a car with the sun and nothing to do. And I seized a lot in.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, no, they tried when we were going through this seizure. Somebody tried to get a musicogenic seizure out of me.
Yeah. I mean,
Um, but it was Hans Luters who said, Martha, when are you not playing music?
hmm.
I said, exactly.
I
Yeah.
mean, one of the interesting things that you said to me, Dr. Taylor, when we were having a conversation a little while ago, and I explained to you that when my epilepsy was particularly bad, the one thing that never wavered and the one thing that I could still do was perform and compose even though I was more or less dysfunctional otherwise. And you explained to me that there are um, neuroscientific reasons why the ability to play and perform, etc., go on around the rest of the world collapsing, as it were. So I was wondering if you would explain what those neuroscientific reasons are.
Exactly. You asked me the exact question I was hoping you would ask me because what Martha just said reflects that same thing. Um, to to put it in the most clear terms, uh, the brain has centers for different tasks, and the lesion or the dysfunctional part of the brain that generates a seizure may be in any one of those areas.
Mhm.
But when it comes to music, there is no center or specific part of the brain that is responsible for music. Okay. The music center of the brain is the whole brain. When I give presentations, I demonstrate this by showing an fMRI of a living person's brain listening to music, listening to a person playing the piano. And you can see on there, because it's linked to a computer that shows the different areas of the brain that are busy in response to the different stimuli. And the entire brain is lighting up, not necessarily all at once, all in the same color, but it the music stimulates the brain throughout all of its parts and even including the brain stem. So what is happening with what each of you described is that the specific part of the brain, and I'll use Martha as an example because I'm more familiar with her case. If the focal point for her seizure while she's playing is the amygdala, then it can start there. But because music is activating and is being activated by the entire brain, the whole rest of the brain continues on with the song, so to speak. And the same thing would be happening with yourself. Um, and that's why the music can continue even if the person has the music memorized. And uh, I don't know, Martha, if this happened to you, if you had a seizure while you were playing a solo or, soloing as part of a violin concerto. Um, but if that happened, you might uh, be having a seizure, not necessarily a grand mal seizure, but a petit mal seizure or at least an aura of a seizure, and still be able to remember. Just your brain automatically remember because it's stored everywhere.
Yeah.
So even people who have had part of their brain removed surgically will still remember music because it's stored all over the entire brain. So I hope this helps you understand that question,
Yeah.
because it is an important one, and music therapists know this. At least those who have embraced have yielded, so to speak, to the reality that the reason that music is therapeutic is because we treat disorders of the brain, uh, whether it's autism or psychological disorders, even. They are brain disorders. So, uh, well, I'll stop there.
Well, that leads perfectly. You'd think we'd rehearsed this talk, but that leads perfectly on to my next question. Because when I talk to people about bringing the worlds of music and epilepsy together, the first thing they say is, "Oh, music therapy." And I always say to them that the world of music is like a coin, really. It's got two sides. So whilst it can be beneficial, it can also be risky as well. Not only in the case of musicogenic seizures, but other triggering factors as well. And one of the intriguing things I noticed about your work was the development of AMP. So I would like you to I'd like to invite you to explain a bit more about AMP and explain to people what it is.
Okay, you'll have to remind me what you're referring to when you say,
Advanced musical planning.
oh, okay, advanced planning, advanced musical
Yeah,
planning.
yeah.
Um, that is a procedure or a process that I recommended to the music therapy community and actually the entire long-term care community, um, because advanced planning involves getting permission and the wishes of the person as to what's going to happen to them if they become incapacitated. Um, Now, I would say most long term care facilities have some music involved, even if it's just a volunteer coming in and entertaining for a while. But probably the majority of them have access to a music therapist, if not on staff, but someone who's contracted in to come in and actually do therapy. But if the people that they're working with have advanced dementia and they have not planned ahead of time uh, what music to use if they need or if music therapy is recommended, um, then the music therapist really is not necessarily going to be using the best music for that person. And what the research is showing is that for any person of any age, even newborns, the, the, the music that will be the most therapeutic for them or that you can use in therapeutic procedures the most effectively will be the music that is already stored in their brains, in their memory patterns. And even neonates have memory of music from being in the womb because the research has shown that they can hear it from about 20 weeks on. And they react to it from about 20 weeks on. And that continues clear into adulthood and even when a person gets to old age and goes into a nursing home, all of that information is still there, stored all over the brain. But if a person has dementia, it's too late to ask them what's your favorite music because they may not even know their own name. They will know that music if they hear it and they will
Yeah.
respond to it.
Yeah.
But if you want to ask them and know ahead of time, you need to plan in advance and get that information before they develop advanced dementia. And so I developed a procedure for doing that that's called advanced music planning. Um, and it was published on the website of the Wisconsin Medical Association, and Minnesota, I believe, published it, and a number of music therapists have been using it. So that's very important because the music still is there. Even people who, if you ask them their own name or the name of their children or the name of their spouse, they don't know it. But if you play the right song, they will sing along with all the words. And some even will get up and some who can't walk, who are non-ambulatory, will get up and dance to the music. It's that powerful in stimulating the brain. I did want to say a couple of times you've mentioned musicogenic epilepsy,
Yeah.
and that is an important topic. It's interesting because I've never known. I'm not saying there are none. I've never known a professional musician, though, or an advanced musician who uh, has contracted or has shown symptoms of musicogenic epilepsy. I myself was a professional musician, and I became a professional musician even after I had my severe closed head injury with coma. Um, and I firmly believe that being a music major and then becoming a professional musician shortly thereafter is a major reason why my brain made a full recovery and I did not have seizure disorders or aphasia or any of the other kinds of disorders that for many people do result from a severe head injury.
Yeah. So I was faced in my workup and in for surgery with this comment that a neurologist, epileptologist came to my bedside who was also a violinist and said, "We have had a closed head injury here of a musician who never again perceived music. It became cacophony like street news." Yeah. And so that was like sitting there with me. Um, but I had my WADA test. They test for when they want to take out a piece of brain. They test the right left dominance of memory and speech and blah blah, everything. And to do that, of course, it's a bunch of neuropsych tests, but then they just lay out and shut down half the brain. So they go from just like from your carotid artery up, or from your femoral artery up to your carotid artery, and shoot them a barbital and anesthetize the right brain and just talk to the left brain. And it's a big series of questions. What's this? What's that? Blah blah blah. What's this color? It's a whole series of stuff, and they ask the whole thing again to see if you remember what you need. Um, but they added music to mine, and that was because before that test, Hans Luters looked at me and said, "I'm on uncharted waters, Martha." And I said, "Let's chart the water." And he looked right at my husband and said, who's a cellist, and said, "Give me 6 musical excerpts, you'll know automatically." And so they played 3 to my left brain and 3 to my right brain. And my right brain was the bad side. And so with my left brain, with my right brain turned off, I could hear everything and I could sing everything back. I had a timbre problem at one point. I mean, I couldn't, it sounded like a piano piece. I was trying to pull it up. The piano repertoire wasn't coming. And when they played it to both sides, it was a Vivaldi Four Seasons. Like I could sing it back, I could perceive it. But I knew everything else. But when they knocked out my left brain, I couldn't hear music. They would play me something and it would like a few bad chords, chords that I decided later, once both sides were working, that there was no melody. There was no, it was like everything went horizontal, I mean, vertical, including non-harmonic tones. It was like everything went vertical and these muddy chords happened. And bleh, but at least that was without my right brain. It's like, okay, so I can do everything on the left. And I could so much do everything on the left, but they redid the test the next day. Right-handed person, I mean, right through the same hole as it's like, come on, guys. But they wanted to make sure they for sure shut down the right brain and that I wasn't using any for that test. And sure enough, I did this same stuff. I mean, all of my recall, and of course, one of the things I remember going back and without a left brain was it was very garbled speech, very. But anyway, I was very glad coming out of that test. I was at least tartan that looks like the right temper looks pretty bad. And the left temper looks really good. So we have a chance of not messing me up too hard. But the last concert I played before that first brain surgery was with Franco Gulli, great violinist. This was in the late 80s. Yeah, early 90s. So he was playing the Beethoven Violin Concerto. And all the way through the slow movement, I just cried because I thought, if I can't ever play again, it'll break my heart and I'll cry hard, but I'll like meet them in a white coat. I'll just go, I'll just go into neurology or something. Um, but if I can't ever perceive this again, I never hear late Beethoven's. I can't hear the Beethoven Violin Concerto. I'm not sure I can. I don't know that I if I can be sane. If I can ensure sanity. And then the voice that came to me was, yeah, but if they get memories that bad, maybe I'll never remember it even happened. Maybe, music, that whole thing will be taken over by unknowing and I'll be okay. And that is the strange head one has to go into to risk a brain. That sort of, yeah, well. And as it turned out, music memory, Ludus was so worried all the time about music memory. And so I played after the first surgery, I played solo Bach because it's the hardest step in the world to do for memory. I mean, you take a wrong turn in solo in Bach, and you could go anywhere and still be in the same piece or be in the next piece. So I played solo Bach to make sure to really test what I thought he was talking about, music memory. And I sat down because it was so, 9 hours of general anesthesia and I'm still shaking. So I sat down and played, and then I opened my eyes, and I could tell by my mother and my brother and my husband, the two musicians, I had done what I thought I'd done. And so I stood up. I stood up just to knock the surgeon over and played part of the Sibelius Violin Concerto, just mess him up, just to just to drop his jaw. And at the end of that first big cadence, what they said to me is, "That's so wonderful, Martha. We were just wondering if you would work or do with as well." Hey, music memory is not ability to memorize music. Music memory is the memory that there is music. And they were afraid I might open that case and not know I was related to that. That's how far they were afraid they were going to get that. And when they said that to me, we're just wondering if you know what to do with blood. I looked up and they said, it's in my joints. It's helpful to be a smart aleck in the hospital during really heavy times. But yeah, and that's when the head slap came from this neuropsych guy who said, we didn't test music memory.
So,
yeah, but it was all there, but it was a good thing that there was good brain and there was bad brain. But I have to think that all those hours of practice from a very young age had transferred stuff pretty well to the left. In fact, musicians, as opposed to people who listen to music, people who train to music, generally, don't they sort of make some shifts to the left? Or at least more of the brain used than simply listening at the training. But I totally see why you would want a plan ahead of time, because my grandfather got a real extreme dimension. They asked for his violin back, and I went out there and bought a bow that was open to the front and set him up, tuned the violin. He hadn't played the violin forever. And I, got it tuned, helped the bow. I left the room, and it didn't take too long for him to have a 2-octave G major scale in the violin. And then he came out, and started playing old love songs and hymns to my grandmother. Uh, and, how with those muscles did it. That was amazing.
So one of the things that you touched upon, Dr. Taylor, about people with dementia who are generally at the point of being non-ambulatory, becoming re-ambulatory, reminded me of a former colleague of mine, actually, an Irish guitarist and singer-songwriter, Lewis McTaggart. And he spent time going around sheltered housing, old people's homes, etc. And one such person that he came across was a lady who basically spent most of her time in a still position and not really responsive to very much. And one day he came in and he started playing, and she started moving, but she started moving in very specifically coordinated ways, which nobody in the place had ever seen before. And they did some research, and it turns out that she actually used to be an international ballet dancer.
Hmm.
And so he wrote a tremendous song about her story called I Used to Dance.
Mhm.
Um, and honestly, it is just, as a songwriter myself, I listened to that song I Used to Dance by Lewis McTaggart, and I was thinking, it's just absolutely incredible. And they did a really nice video of it as well. Um, so I would highly recommend both of you at some point to look for that song, I Used to Dance by Lewis McTaggart. It's brilliant. Now, Martha, one of the things that I heard you mention on a previous discussion was your resilience, really, throughout your life, to those who try to keep you down, as it were. And and I thought, yeah, that is definitely one of the parallels that you and I have. Um, Obviously, this talk isn't about me, um, but I have throughout my life had times where people have tried to keep me down and lower my expectations and lower everybody else's expectations of me. And my drive has always been, well, okay, then I'll prove you all wrong. And uh, and you said pretty much exactly that, but in much better words,
Oh,
in a recent interview that you did. So, for those in the audience watching who have experienced that as well, who are living with epilepsy and who have experienced being kind of put in a box, put on the shelf, told not to expect very much of themselves, etc. Uh, what would you say to them?
oh, oh, you took me
Yeah.
because I have something very um when we're not spending uh, as long as there's epilepsy and there's epilepsy, right? There are lots of different kinds, and
Mhm.
most of us have intermittent seizures, so we have time.
Mhm.
There are brains that are stuck having 14 seizures a day and stuff, and that was different than me.
Yeah.
Um, but I would say probably most of us who are out functioning in the world have fewer seizures than that. I mean, mine were like 3 to 5 times a day.
Mhm.
Um, and what I noticed, because I was on stage like the totally nutcase person, who just went out and seized in front of people because I wanted to play the Maytime. Um, was that you come back when you regain consciousness. And for me, it wasn't, you know, whatever level of consciousness you go out. Um, when you come back, you're back. And when you have a self again, and this is where lots of people will say self is an illusion. No, it's not. When you when you come back, when you hook back up and you're back, you have agency, choice. And mine was often I was on stage. Well, not often. Most of my seizures didn't happen on stage. But you can decide what to do, and you can do it on your own terms. I want this. I would pick up my violin and finish a Beethoven. But if I wasn't on stage, it was still a matter for all of us. It's a matter of I'm going to do this. You're back. You're almost always there. You cut out in seizure. There's a glitch in the brain that makes you cut out from time to time in seizure. But when you come back, use those conscious moments to develop something you love. That's my biggest thing. Beauty's not a frill, it's a human need. And it's not always music. And it's certainly most people in the world aren't going to be professional violinists. I mean, for lots of reasons. Um, but it's a something. You can have people because you can find the people who do what you like to do. And that's how I had a world because I had a music world and I would cut out from time to time, but I'd be back and those musicians. But if you find a group of people who like what you like, even dropping becomes less of an issue because they'll come pick you up and pick you up. That's the real core of having epilepsy is because you're in and out.
Yeah.
You need people who are there, who do what you do, and like what you like. And it's such an important thing to do what you want to do while you're conscious.
Yeah.
Because you're so powerful. You have a sense. You have that power of the sense. And it turns as soon as consciousness is back. I knew I was back. I knew I was back. I could hear my brain say, "You can do it. I know you can do it. Just do it. You can do it, Martha. I love you. Just do it." That's what was important to me. That's what I learned in that seizure road was that if I was back, I could do it.
Excellent. I mean, you touched upon a very important point there, the importance of others, having others around us, who understand the experience. And as I was saying to Dr. Taylor just a few weeks ago, it is very important to acknowledge that actually living with epilepsy is not exclusive to the patient who has the seizures, but is very much a collective experience. And somebody who put that brilliantly was the late great guitarist and songwriter from Toronto, Jim Armstrong. And he did a lot of work for Epilepsy Toronto. And he wrote an album called Mudtown. And on that album was a song called Angel in Our Corner. And the lyrics to that are brilliant, and he absolutely nailed it 100%. The experience of living with epilepsy is that some days you can be absolutely great, absolutely strong, everything's working perfectly well, there's nothing you can't do. And then the next day, you really need that somebody there who is going to pick you back up, dust you back off, and start all over again. And he really really nailed that in that song, "Angel in Our Corner." Uh, so again, if you're going to leave this meeting with a playlist to look at, that's definitely another one to have a listen to. He was a brilliant man, really great guitarist and singer-songwriter. So to Dr. Taylor, what advice would you give to anybody watching this who wants to be perhaps a music therapist?
Oh, that's a different question I thought you were going to ask. But yes, there are, to be a music therapist, you need a degree in music therapy that includes at least 4 years on campus, plus an internship that's at least 6 months. Now, I've been retired from full time teaching for a couple of decades, but I believe it's still 6 months. And then you sit for an exam that is administered by the Certification Board for Music Therapy. And once you pass that exam, you are a board certified music therapist. So if you're considering becoming a music therapist, I would say start practicing your music, playing music, and become a good musician, because being a music therapist requires being a musician and a good musician. Bad music is not therapeutic. Um, so that should go without saying, but I sometimes have to remind people that your musicianship really is your tool, your primary tool for reaching patients and making changes. So that would be my advice on that.
So what were you expecting me to ask? And feel free to answer it. Uh,
Well, the two of you made a number of points that I was going to add to or respond to.
mhm,
I particularly resonated with Martha's point about musical memory not being memorizing music.
mhm,
Everyone has musical memory. Even the neonate at birth has a certain amount of musical memory, and there's research that has measured that to show their physical and attentive change reactions in response to music that was played in their presence uh, during gestation, as opposed to their responses to music that was not played around the mother while they were developing in utero. And the responses are measurably different, which shows that they do have musical memory. I do have a case which I described in my second book
mhm,
of a person that well, I met this lady at a conference in Connecticut, and that when I was preparing to speak, and she was not a music therapist. She was a realtor, and so you may be asking, what does a realtor have to do with all this? But she had a son. She has a son who remembered, verbally stated that he remembered the music that she played while he was inside of her. And he said that he was at about 18 months. She was had him in the car when she was on her way to a house showing, and he was being more active than she wanted him to be. So she reached over and put in the music that she had played before he was born. And he said And he said, "Mommy, that's the music that I heard inside." Um, and that I told that I had her actually come back the next day and tell that story to my audience, because I knew that my audience wouldn't believe me if I just told the story. But coming from her, and she had nothing to gain, they had no choice but to believe it. And you can imagine when she said what he said, there was a big, all the air just got sucked right out of the room in 1 second. Um, so yeah, there's that and other research that shows that musical memory is is very, very active and very powerful, and that's the basis on which people should be making their playlists for an occasion when they would have brain damage or severe dementia or some other incapacitating condition, so that the music can be used to stimulate the recovery of their brain. Probably the most extreme example of that would be the case of Gabby Giffords, who was a congresswoman, who is a congresswoman from Arizona, um, and she was shot through the head, and they thought she was dead, but she wasn't. And she went and she had every kind of therapy you can imagine. But all of her therapists, the recreational therapists, the physical therapists, the occupational therapists, they were all coordinating with the music therapists to involve music in addition to the music therapy itself. And this lady recovered enough to return to Congress in just 3 years. And they had said she might never walk or talk again. That was what the doctors said at first, but the doctors weren't familiar with what music can do. So that would be my advice to people: make your playlist, and as Martha said, find out what your passion is and follow that, because it's there. Uh, I even identified with your story about the dancer, because I have a stage dance background myself. In fact, my wife and I are planning to go to a dance tonight.
Brilliant.
We met dancing and we still dance, swing dancing and ballroom dancing. Tonight's is a 50s, 60s dance. So we're debating as to whether to dress up in those outfits. But dance is very important. And I think singing and dancing uh, were being so involved in singing and dancing, because I was a stage dancer at the time of my brain brain injury. I think that those things were a major part of why I was able to make such a complete recovery.
Mm-hmm. Well, I hope you enjoy your dance tonight, definitely. Uh, and one of my own experiences of being a composer with epilepsy, from a therapeutic angle, um, is that at times when I've not been in a very great place mentally, partly due to my epilepsy, and other reasons as well. Quite often I've found that what I wanted to say verbally but didn't really know how, I was able to convey musically, therefore without saying a word. And
Yeah.
it was
Yeah,
so incredibly
exactly.
helpful. Uh, that's
Exactly. And pardon me for interrupting, but this is such an important point, especially with regard to Martha's situation,
yeah.
because the job of the amygdala
Mhm.
is, and it is there deep in the temporal lobes. The job of the amygdala is to put is to decide what behaviors to use to express emotions that are felt. So we feel emotions, but how we express them, that's the job of the amygdala. So for many people, expressing emotions that they have no other ready way to express is to do that through music. And that's the source of much of our music. So the amygdala is very important. Um, so it's possible to play music and remember music and sing music, even if the amygdala is not involved, but to express emotions that are generated by the music and express them through music, the amygdala is very, very involved. And so that's so important.
Arthur?
Well, one of the things I love about the amygdala, my right amygdala was the seizure focus, and so it was pretty horrifying. But I mean, the seizure was horrifying. But the amygdala, I had a good left amygdala, thank goodness, and now
Mhm.
we got the other one
Yes.
out. But the amygdala is that hotbed of emotions, and it has very strong connections to the prefrontal cortex.
Yes.
Responsible for rational decisions in the social world, which is different than rational decisions about lines and shapes and colors and but in the social world. And it also has very strong connections to the hypothalamus, homeostasis, heart rate, breath rate.
Yes.
So there is that piece. It's a very powerful piece of brain. Um, and somebody asked me on a plane once. He was an anthropologist who told me that the evolutionary biologist in me has to ask, what is the survival value of music? And I was feeling, for some reason, able to answer that question. It was years ago. And I said, well, the human being is driven to communicate. We don't teach babies to communicate, they come forth driven to communicate. Um, and for biological reasons, they're driven to communicate. It's biology. And music communicates directly to the depth of human emotion. Emotions are embedded in biology. This is not fluffy stuff. This is,
Yeah.
emotions are embedded in biology. So with music, we can communicate directly with the biology that dictates how we feel. And so that's how it is that reason, how did I put this? Reason, emotion, heart rate are inextricably connected.
Exactly.
Isn't that cool? It,
Yes.
it's what's so powerful is that that's the connection. It matters what you feed that unconscious brain, what you're around, what's happening, because then the job is stuff bubbles up from the unconscious, and the will is to either restrain or go with it, whatever that thought is. Um, which is how come I was really glad. Oh yes, I can. It was embedded in me well enough that when you can't do this, you can't do that. No one with epilepsy should try to do this. Blah 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 blah. I could restrain that with oh yes, I can. Um, which was of course what saved me
Yeah.
was that just watch me. Um, and my mother was interviewed a number of times as being my mother-in-law, and someone asked why, if you knew your daughter had this problem, because I started seizing when I was 3, would you send her down the path of musician? Because that puts her in front of people, right? That's and my mother was so politic with the answer. She said, I saw doors shutting in front of her, and I just did everything I could to help her open doors. She turned to me afterward, after the whole thing was over, and turned to me and said, what? You would have been better convulsing as a waitress? It's like, that's my mom. It's like, so everyone should be go do what you really love to do. Because you're going to seize no matter, I mean, if you have intractable illness, you're going to seize no matter what
Yeah.
until they get that, until either they take that piece out or they get that right. Um, so at least be seizing while you're in love with what you're doing. I had that problem, of course, of thinking in terms of professional playing. It's like, yeah. Um, and then I realized that my desire to play could override that fear of seizing in front of people. That,
Yeah.
that my desire to play was just so strong. And then I realized, you know what? They all have somebody sitting next to them in the audience. They all have somebody they can turn to and talk about it if they get scared.
Yeah.
So they'll be fine. And that's everybody with epilepsy. The world is going to live. If you look like you're about to die, they will call an ambulance and save your life.
Yeah.
But the whole audience thing, the whole onlooker, the job of the onlooker when the person comes back is to smile at them. Smile. We've never experienced that in our lives till the
Mhm.
first person actually smiles at it. He was the husband I've been married to for 40 years. He was my cellist in a quartet. He actually smiled at me um, and told me I just had a seizure. And I always argued, no, I didn't. What makes you think I had a seizure? You know, I did that whole thing. But that's so important that we somehow have someone there appreciating us no matter how bad life gets.
I think that's a one. Yeah, one.
Yeah, I was just going to add to what Martha said back about the survival question. Uh, the the amygdala really is the reason it's essential for developing what we call emotional intelligence
Right.
because our brain stores not only the feelings of the emotions, but our emotional expressions. And it calls upon those emotional expressions, the ones that are the most effective, the ones that are the most expressive, that other people understand and respond to the best, and recalls on those. But without the amygdala, we wouldn't have those expressions. So it's essential to the development of that emotional intelligence.
I was going to say, I think they are both beautiful quotes and points with which to wrap things up for tonight. But it's been extremely educational for me listening to both of you. And I hope to get the chance to talk to both of you again at some point in the near future as well. But for today, a huge thank you to Martha Curtis and Dr. Dale Taylor.